Hey everybody, I've got a piece of walnut here that came out of that last haul, and I'm gonna make a spoon with it. So let me get set up here. I'm gonna hog some material out right here. I'm not too worried about being super careful at this stage because I'm just, removing a bunch of material. What do you do? Really hot in the shop today. I really like making spoons for whenever I've got like the physical energy to make something, but I don't really have the creative energy or inspiration because I'm at a point where I can make a spoon and pretty much every single time I'm going to be happy with the way it comes out. And it's a way for me to one make another thing. I'm building a little bit more practice under the tools. Uh-oh, looks like I'm having some internet problems right now. Do. Let me know if that's any better. If you can hear me or what? I got the fan blowing. There's not much I can do about that. I can't work out here without the fan going. I know it's loud. And if you hear some crunchy sounds, it's my dog over there tearing apart a chew toy. Let me see. Buddy. What a mess. All right, I'm back. Yeah, back to the point I was saying about making spoons. I listened to somebody talk the other day, and he brought up how there's no such thing as a wasted effort because pretty much everything ends up coming back one way or another. And a lot of times it's not the way you would expect. In fact, it's almost always not in the way you would expect. But let's see something right now. Buster, buddy. back at it. Here we go. So I'm just going to take some chunks out here. I had a lot of ideas for stuff to talk about before I started this one too, and then now I'm sitting here, and none of it's really feeling natural. I think I'm just going to carve away for a little bit. Maybe if I get somebody in the comments, I can talk with them. Doesn't seem like this one's going very well right now. Let's see. I started on a little bit larger sculpture earlier today. And then I started having some trouble with it. And I decided just to give it a break. I'll circle back to that. Because I feel like whenever I start to force stuff, it's whenever I start making mistakes, and I don't know. I think I'm just going to have to circle back to that once I've got, a fresh palette, so they say. Fresh set of eyes. Maybe I need to sleep on it. Something like that. Something like that. I don't know. I like the idea of doing live streams, but I'm not really a rambler, It's hard for me to just come up with like stuff to keep talking. Maybe I'm better off sticking with short form. I don't know. Sometimes strong sentiments are held in the spaces where things are left unsaid. So in that big stack of wood I got, there was 2 pieces of walnut that were just a little bit thicker than the rest of them. And I'm like, I'm planning on making a very large sculpture with all of it. I'm like, I could maybe spare a few pieces. I could spare a few pieces for spoons. And this was out of that stuff that was slightly thicker, and I'm like, okay, it's a little bit different from the rest of the stock. So it stands out to me just for that. It is kind of plain grained. There's no cool figuring. There was a piece that had some really cool figuring, and that was actually on a video that I uploaded earlier this week. And that one, I had to make a spoon with it just because it had really cool figuring, But this one, I mean, it's plain. It's a little bit light in comparison to the other walnut that I have. But the extra thickness means I can make a deeper bowl on it. And I think a deeper bowl makes a cooler spoon. Some people don't like the round. This one is actually a little more oval than I generally go. A little bit more oval. But I think they look really cool when they're really circular, I guess that's just a preference thing, but this one actually is going to be a pretty long oval. And I'm going to bring this out a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I could make the whole thing a little bit deeper. Bring this further forward. I might bring it all the way to the end of that board, honestly. All the way up to it. I might cheat and bring it over to the bandsaw after I get this bowl cut. I know it's more fun to watch it be carved from scratch, but that just takes forever. I wonder how deep I could make this thing though without making it too thin, because if you make it too thin, then it'll just kind of break, and we don't want that. I'm trying to find the delicate balance between and this one too. There's enough material here. I think I might put a cool design in the handle after I get it kind of shaped up. I'll leave it kind of round. Maybe do like little spirals going across here. I don't know. It is a lot of work, but if I do a little bit with the knife, I can come back through with these little jeweler's files and make something pretty cool. Almost kind of egg shaped. I don't know. I've got this other piece too right here. I'm going to make 2 out of this one. I'm wondering if I should just carve both of those bowls into this piece, and then I can bring them all to the bandsaw. And then I can just come back and carve all 3 of them, or I could just finish this one in one fell swoop. I don't want to be just sitting on dead air for a little bit while I'm over at the bandsaw, but I don't know. Maybe I should have recorded this, or I went live using my phone instead of my GoPro. That way I could have just brought it over there with me to the bandsaw and y'all could have seen that. But the GoPro's just got too much stuff on it to be able to move it over there. It's a little bit flat over here. Buster, put that, Bubba. Put that. Well, I don't have anybody watching right now, so good as time as any. Take a trip to the bandsaw. Hey, I'm back. Move these out of the way. I'm going to try to keep this handle as close to circular as I can. Just because I want to get, that look to it, Sometimes I try to make them a little bit more flat or almost like a sideways diamond kind of profile this way is. because I just think it feels nice in the hand. But this one I'm going to go more for the actual look than the feel. But I say that it's probably still going to end up being a little bit diamond shaped. Yeah, some people are purists whenever it comes to spoon carving. They think that you ought to use a hatchet and no sandpaper and whatever. I don't know. I think there's a balance to that, you know, using the best tools you have available while still being true to the whole idea that you're going after. Hey, Buster Bubba. Oops. GoPro died. Power it back up. I don't know why it does that. It just times out, I guess. Come on. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. At least it tells you whenever it's shutting off. Yeah, the bottom side of the bowls is like my least favorite part of this. I think my favorite part of carving these is making this transition right from the bowl, right in this like one little area right here though. Especially I like making it kind of dip down a little bit right there. Oops, I had a little bit chippy. I don't know. I might let Buster be in one of my videos coming up. He likes to hang out in the shop with me while I work. I leave it open, the door open, so he can go back inside because I know it gets hot out here for a dog. But he just wants to hang out with me. I don't know. Do y'all think I should do a spiral or a plain handle? I can try to do a spiral, and if it doesn't work out, then I can always go back to plain, I guess. And like I said, I think these are good for like the in-between projects. Like, you know, you want to be refining your skills, getting better at using the tools, but you don't want to really use a whole lot of material, and you want to have something to show for it. All right, you know, a spoon. I want to practice carving. All right, I'll make me a spoon. If I don't have a better idea. These are all reliable. They're fun. They don't require a whole lot of creative energy, so it's just a little something to pass the time. People like them. I got a little bit of a tradition that whenever I meet new people, I try to, if I know I'm going to meet somebody new, I'll bring them a little something that I made, and if you know, I think a little hand carved spoon makes a good little gift. Buster, sorry about that noise. A little better. Hand cramp. All right. I've been doing a lot of carving lately. I recently finished sculpting a more abstract piece. Right now, I'm still like layering up the finish on it. It'll probably be a day or two before I get that posted on my page, but I'm really happy with it. I saw a Mobius strip, and that got me inspired. And the piece that I carved or I sculpted wasn't really a Mobius strip, but until I get that posted, I guess that's all I really want to say about it. But I'm really happy with how that turned out. Bring that down. Yeah, and I used it was made out of poplar, that piece, and poplar's really ugly. I don't know. Some people say it's ugly. If you get like a piece of like rainbow poplar, don't get me wrong, that's pretty. But just in general, I mean, it's just a plain looking wood, and it doesn't take stain very well. But I played with some unicorn spit. I ended up mixing up purple and blue and black, and then a little dab of white because the black was a little bit overpowering, and I put that on there, and it still kind of blacked it out. So I went back over it with some 600 grit sandpaper, just where you could barely see the grain popping through. And I'm now, after that dried, I'm putting spar urethane on it, and I really like the way it's turning out so far. So give me, like I said, maybe 2 days, and then I'll have all that footage put together, and I'll have a long form video on it or something. At least a short. I'm definitely making a video on it. Hey puppy, what's he doing, Bubba? Oh, no, make a mess. No, none of that. Okay. I don't know with this. It's going to make it less, food usable if I do this, but I was thinking I could put a ebonizer on it, make it like, dark, and it would look really cool, but kind of defeats the purpose of a spoon if you do that, right? But I don't really think that people would use these for eating, I mean, it is a spoon, but I feel like it's just kind of like a thing, like a thing to look at. I don't know. I like to use mine for ice cream and stuff. But see, I made some paste wax. My sister does candles, and she had some beeswax, and I was like, let me get a handful of that. So she gave me a bag, and then I just mixed it up. I went to CVS actually, and I bought some mineral oil laxative because I know, like, if you got to drink it, it's got to be food safe, right? So I just boiled that down and mixed them together, and I had paste wax that was food safe. I don't know if I'm allowed to call it like food grade, but like, at least I know it's safe for my own uses. I'm not gonna market anything as quote unquote food grade unless I've got it straight from the horse's mouth. I don't know. There's some kind of regulations on how all that works, and I think it's easier just to recommend against using it for food. But for my own purposes, I'm not really selling my spoons. I'm not selling food utensils. I'm making them. I'm enjoying it, and this piece right here is probably going to go into my kitchen. Da-da-da-da-da. Using gloves for this is a double-edged sword, because I'm like way more likely to end up cutting myself if I can't feel the piece, you know? But I don't know. It's like it's hard to find the balance, I guess. There's not much of a chance of me cutting myself with the hand I'm using, or on the hand I'm using the tool with, you know what I mean? So maybe if I just do it this way. I did get myself pretty good right here 2 or 3 days ago, and then I'm like, well, maybe I should start using the gloves. But I don't know. I mean, in that case though, like I was just doing something really stupid, and I'm like, well, if I just, you know what I mean? It's like I can't be mad at the thing for me doing it wrong. Like I was doing something stupid, and it came back to haunt me. I don't know. I think after this spoon, if I can still handle sitting out here in the heat, I might go back to that abstract sculpture, that other one I've been working on, the second one, and let y'all see some of that live if nobody's really here. I might just save that one, let it be a sneak peek. Probably should have done this earlier before it got this bad. Yeah, that's the thing with stropping. If you strop frequently enough, then it makes it to where you rarely ever have to use a stone. But you just got to remind yourself that the strop is there. You know? Because if you go so long without using the strop, then, you know, you might as well just go right back to the stone. But if you maintain it, man, a little maintenance will go a long way. How about that? Oh, I just butchered that. I can probably sand it out, but like I said, some people just don't believe in sanding. I mean, I think if you could get a really clean surface, I'm just like, the amount of work it takes to get a perfectly smooth surface with a freaking Sloyd is just not worth it whenever you could just come back with some sandpaper. You know, maybe that's just a skill issue on my part, but I don't know. Maybe the more I do this, the more I'll come around on that idea too. You know? But as of where I'm at right now, it's just not worth it. It's just so much effort. So much effort. And it's really easy to just get frustrated and try to force it. But it really doesn't. If you get it nice and sharp and you're making supported grain cuts all day long, you can just shave a little bit off like that. And that's not really requiring a whole lot of force on my part. And you know, when I force it, that's whenever I start getting the tear out. That's when I start getting all this ugly little stuff, you know. So just in general, I think for carving, spoons are just a really good place to practice. Buster. Buster, 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 Buster. Let's see, I can just... So as far as like my sculpture goes, I've been looking at some sanding tools. One of them is the Neo sander, and I'm pretty interested in that. They don't have the consumables, the refill kits available for sale yet though, so I'm skeptical about pulling the trigger on that until I see that they have, you know, long-term support for it, because it's kind of expensive. You know, it's a little reciprocate. It looks like a little miniature Sawzall. You know, it seems like a really cool tool. I'm just skeptical about buying it. What happens if I buy it and then boom, you can't buy the little sanding attachments for it, because you know you only get so much use out of each one. And if I buy it, then I can't get replacements for it. Then really, I spent all that money just for, you know, a couple of uses. I went and picked up this little desktop fan. Got that thing sitting right in front of my face. It's nice. Yeah, but back to that sander. I don't know, I've been thinking about that a lot. But I'm kind of split, because I'm at the point where I'm not going to spend any outside money on this whole endeavor. And I'm trying to decide which one is the better investment, because I only want to spend money I make doing this on leveling up within this. And I'm wondering what's the better buy for the big picture here. Do I want to have something that's going to speed up my sanding, or I've also thought about upgrade my camera, because I'm using a GoPro from like 2017. But I mean, I don't know, for what I'm doing, like, I feel like this isn't terrible video quality, you know. I mean, it's not the best, sure, but I do know that makes a huge difference. You know, even just a little bit of an upgrade. But I don't know, analytics says that over 70% of my viewers are watching on their phone. And, you know, would you even notice that difference on a screen that small? But then you look at things like, you know, all the support and stuff, like, you know, if I got one of the DJI models, I don't know. Would I be able to interface that easier with my laptop and all? That's just stuff I don't know. And it's a lot of research, and it's kind of overwhelming. But I don't know. I feel like I've been fairly consistent with this. I've also been fairly consistent with the YouTube side of things, but I've been consistent with woodworking for a very long time, and I guess there's like been a shift where I'm becoming more interested in more like artistic, more sculpture stuff rather than because for the longest time I was like interested in like traditional woodworking and almost exclusively hand tools. I mean, don't get me wrong though, if I got the bandsaw and there's a good opportunity to save some time using the bandsaw, I'm gonna do it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say I'm a purist, because at a certain point, you're just being inefficient for the sake of being inefficient. But I want to also stay true to the craft. I want to stay true to the design philosophy. I want to stay true to the reasons I got into this. And I guess it's easy to kind of lose that along the way. But I don't have any qualms with using a bandsaw. Don't hurt my feelings at all. Because at the end of the day, roughing this out with a bandsaw doesn't really change what the final product ends up looking like, what it ends up being, its composition. It doesn't. All it did was save me a couple hours, or maybe not hours, but save me a bunch of time. I probably would have spent, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes messing around with it. For three of them, compared to say the coping saw, or if I split them with a hatchet, and then you split it with a hatchet, you run the risk of breaking it off into a couple different pieces. And what do you do? What do you do? I know what I'll do. I'll throw that bad boy on the bandsaw. I'll cut it down. And see, on these, I like to have a little bit of that little flat surface going on right here, and then roll this over. I wonder how much I can get away with hollowing that out some more, because that was the whole point in using these pieces, was to get the deepest bowl on them as possible. And if I don't take full advantage of that, then it's kind of wasting the material, right? Or I could go the other way with it and say I just want this to be a really hefty spoon. Uh-oh. right, I'm back. I'm gonna have to go play in the settings on my GoPro later and figure out how to turn off the timeout function because that's getting old. And see, if you look at that, I mean, all these facets on there do look pretty cool. Like, they make it undeniably handmade. But I don't know. I guess it's a different appeal because it seems like it's less usable. You know, if I sand it really, really fine and make it perfectly smooth, yeah, it does lose some of that handmade quality. It does, and you can't really argue that. But I mean, I guess you could, but I don't know. I don't think it should. I think leaving that on there like that just for the sake of it looking handmade is kind of cheap. You know, because you know, what's it really worth? I think I could make a better finished product that's still obviously handmade, but less crappily handmade. And you know that, like I said, it's probably mostly a skill issue on my part as to why like all these facets are so pronounced. Buster, Buster, you're making some noises, make everybody feel weird. Buster, buddy. Yeah, spoons are fun. I actually think I might take like part of an afternoon and just make a buttload of spoon blanks. Go ahead and just cut them all out on the bandsaw. I might go like just, sit at the park, whittle a couple spoons. Yep. I'm almost done with this one. I don't think I'm gonna do these two live. I think I'm just gonna finish this one out, and I don't know. I'm still tempted to do the spiral. I don't know. There's enough there to do the spiral, I think. There's definitely enough there left to do it. I'm going to go against the spiral. I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to take this all the way down on this side. Let's see where it kind of flares out that way, so it'll be kind of right-handed. Which I don't know. That's kind of weird, right? The idea of like a right-handed spoon. Oh well. I think it's kind of cool. It's like, like that or that. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing live streams, though. I think I'm just going to do the pre-recorded videos after this. Now, these do seem kind of like low pressure. I don't know. Maybe I should put the Ebenezer on here. If I do that, though, I'm definitely going to sand it first. This part right here always freaks me out because there's really not a good way to do it without cutting towards yourself. But I guess that's what the gloves are for. And then, it's important to keep this, above that knuckle. So that way, at the end of the day, you got this in between you and the piece. And slow, controlled cuts going this way. That's what the glove is for. All right, if I don't do the spiral, though, then maybe I should just make the whole thing a little bit thinner. I think them having a delicate look to them is a nice aesthetic for the spoons. Plus, this piece of walnut, it's like, it's straight grained. It's hefty. I don't think durability is going to be a huge issue with it. I see some ugly spots right here. See, with the Sloyd, you don't want to be digging into it. You really want to be shaving across it. Otherwise, if you try to dig into it, you get these little ugly divots. Like, let's see, yeah, if you can see that on camera, right there. And that's what I'm trying to not do. Now, saying that and actually doing that is two different things. I think I did all right on that side. Now, I can't get too much thinner on this side though. Let's see, it's closing up. I think actually for that spot, I might try. Actually, instead of bringing the inside or the outside in, I'll try to bring the inside out a little bit. And yeah, I know this isn't the best way to be doing this, but let me grab some sandpaper. I'm going to start with 150 grit. And see, now you can, once I start sanding it, you can really see all those divots I was talking about. And for me, I think sanding it with the really heavy grit is the best way to really work right up onto that edge, because I like to make it almost like a knife edge where it meets. That makes it look really thin, but it can taper out as it gets down here, so it looks thin, but you still have the strength there of the full piece. And I actually ordered some hook and loop interfaces, like the foam interfaces in between like my orbital sander, so that sanding these contours would be a little bit more forgiving. Because if I just put the orbital sander directly on this, it's going to put a flat face there, then I rotate a little bit and another flat face. But I think that sponge should help me out a little bit. And then I can start doing this with the orbital sander with a little bit more luck. I don't like doing this with the orbital sander right now without that. Hopefully it'll do what I think it will. But I don't like using the orbital sander on these pieces like this as it stands, because it ends up leaving a lot of flat spots. Let's see. Do this. See, I just think that smooth, continuous surface looks a lot better than the choppy facets. Maybe that's just me. See here, I want to break all the sharp edges like that and that, but see, I want to be really careful on the smoother edges like this. I want to retain some of those, because those give it some of that, like, I don't want to say character, but yeah, I guess it's character. They make it look, less machine made, a little more intentional. Less optimized for the assembly line. Oh, here we go. Stand by. I gotta turn that off. Why does it do that? Why does it do that? Oh, hey, Jackie. On the last set of spoons I did, I sanded the bowl before I roughed the blank out on the bandsaw, and I think that was a good move. I think I probably should have done that on this one, and I'll definitely do that on the next one because it's a lot easier whenever it's like, attached to the bench to actually put some elbow grease into it. One thing I'm figuring out over time is that a lot of things in life, getting through them is actually just figuring out like the pieces to ignore. There's just so much stuff out there, and the harsh reality is most of that stuff is meaningless. Most of the stuff just kind of stands in the way. Most of the stuff just doesn't really provide anything good. And, especially for somebody like me, I got really bad ADHD. And it's just so easy to get reeled into something that just doesn't really help me at all. And picking and choosing what to give my attention to. Because at the end of the day, there's just so many things to give your attention to, So many things. And what's the point in giving your attention to something? What is it? And that kind of ties into, deciding how a piece is worth the energy to make it, How do you decide that? How do you triage ideas? I don't know. It's just something I've been simmering on for a while. And, like I was talking about earlier, the guy that was saying how there's no such thing as wasted effort. Yeah, but there's different values. There's different values to effort and energy you can put into things, some things have a much higher yield. And I guess it's up to that individual. And then, you never really know how something's going to yield until it's all said and done. So I guess that my point there doesn't really even matter, I guess, to a certain degree, because doing a little bit of research up front, can save you so much time and energy. But, what if you end up doing a bunch of research and decide, you know what, that's just not worth pursuing? Then, was all the energy put into the research a waste? Or was that the value because it saved you more time later on? I don't know. There's got to be some way to calculate all this, or some meaningful way to comprehend it. But and who determines the worth of something? The worth of an effort, an unfruitful effort. Because it seems like so much of the time I've spent learning all this stuff, learning different skills, how to use different tools, more about different wood species, making things that ended up being a flop, making things that were successful. It just seems like the whole thing isn't very fruitful, but I don't know. I'm just drawn to it like a moth to a light. And, it's hard for me to imagine a life without doing this kind of stuff. It really is. I spent a lot of time getting a degree, and that ended up not being everything I thought it was going to be. Don't get me wrong, I learned a lot in college that wasn't even about my major. I learned a lot about what's important to me. But my whole time during my bachelor's degree, I spent more time in the garage making things, processing logs into rough lumber, and I got a lathe, and I made so many bowls and different things. A lot of bowls. And I got good at sharpening too, and I think that's really a underrated skill. I think learning how to use, whether you use like the carbon plates or oil stones or wet stones, it's really underrated skill. Because nothing will tear you up more than a dull blade. The thing is, like with a dull blade, you end up having to force it. Like you'll find yourself with the dull blade putting way more force into a cut than you would with an actual appropriately sharp blade. So you're putting yourself in a position where you're more likely to slip, you're more likely to screw up. But whenever you do screw up, you do slip, boom, a dull knife will butcher the skin, butcher the flesh a lot worse than a sharp one will. Because if you accidentally cut yourself with a sharp knife, it's a lot easier to clean that wound up, But I think the bigger point is to not cut yourself. And, that's why they say a dull knife is way more dangerous than a sharp knife. And I firmly believe that. But, you know, it's also about respecting the tools. You know, especially like I cannot stand using a table saw. But I feel like, you know, I feel like a table saw is more for the craftsman, and the bandsaw is more for the artist. And don't get me wrong, there's overlap there. There's a lot of overlap between both those, the uses of the tools, the types of people that would use those tools, and the things they make with them. But for me, I would much rather use the bandsaw any day of the week. Bandsaw is a lot more forgiving. You can do a lot more cool shapes with a bandsaw too, I've learned. Yeah, so I started 3D printing a sanding block today. I got the design on things. I don't know how that's going to turn out. I ordered some emery cloth, like it's one of those boxes that has all the different. I think it had 80, 150, 220, 400, and 600, something like that. So hopefully that'll work out. I really like using sanding sponges. So much better. They're just so much more comfy to use. And they end up leaving everything a lot softer. At least for this type of stuff. Like, I don't want it to be super crispy, you know? I probably should have grabbed my respirator though. Getting a lot of walnut dust. But walnut doesn't bother me as much as something like cedar or gum. Black gum tears my sinuses up. Why does that do that? Why does it do that? Somebody please tell me why. It's plugged in. It's not trying to save battery. It knows it's connected to my computer. Yeah, carving, kind of like shedding the fat from the piece. You know, it's like bringing the piece to maturity. You know, what all of it there is lingering. It's like a bad habit or grudge piece. All the pieces that gets removed. The pieces it's the materials that don't serve the final function, don't serve the final form of what it needs to be, what it needs to become, where it's going. Who this spoon wants to be. Because, yeah, I mean, it's a spoon, but there's a million different interpretations of what a wooden spoon could look like, and no two of them are going to be the same. You're going to have a lot of similarities. At the end of the day, there's going to be a handle with a bowl, but, you know, anybody that carved a spoon is going to do it different from the next guy, right? They're all going to look different. I think that's the beautiful thing about actually making stuff by hand. You know, I didn't use a ruler. I didn't measure anything, and that's one thing that I've actually find pretty consistent with the stuff I do is I don't like following blueprints. I don't like following. You know, I like having a rough idea of where I'm going, but like I'll sketch something usually whenever I do a layout sketch. Like I won't draw it on paper. I'll draw it directly on the wood. You know, I get the idea of where I want to go with it, and I'll put it on the piece of wood. And if something needs to change, I'll do it live. I'll write it and I'll do it live. To me, I like it because if I put a lot of work into planning up front, that kills a lot of the spontaneity in it for me. You know. And with something like a simple piece like a spoon, you can get away with a whole lot of spontaneity, you know. And you might not even realize it in the final piece, or at least somebody from the outside looking at it, they're like, "Yeah, you carved a spoon." But I'm like, you know, I was originally going to make the handle round. I was going to add some spirals in it, but look how that played out. I ended up not doing that. I ended up doing this little flared handle thing. And, you know, I think it's better for that. It's almost, it might be hard to see this on camera, but it's got some geometry going on. You got a flat there, a flat there. You got a little bit of a flat developing here. I'm going to work more on that. You got this flat, and then you got that. But see, this, it sweeps. It sweeps a little bit. You know, it's really subtle. It's really subtle, but I think it's those little things, the little things like that, that make it what it is. And I feel like to deny that is to lose the whole essence of the thing, of the endeavor. So I mean, I think the act of making something is more important than the actual creation. Honestly, I think this is what it's all about. I think tools in hand is the whole point. But I don't know. I am gonna put that Ebenezer stuff on here. I'm gonna hit it with some isopropyl alcohol to pop the grain. This piece is just way too light for walnut. Look at that. I mean, even whenever it's wet, it still looks really pale. I don't think that looks good. I don't like that color. I don't know. Some people don't like the sanded down look. I think it's better for it. I really do. I do have a little bitty chippy piece right there. I think I can live with that. I can't feel it with my finger now. And I thought I saw a piece over here, but I can't even find it now, so it must not be that bad. Let me grab a finer piece of sandpaper. That was 150 grit. I think I'm going to drop down to 220. If I can find a piece. Here's 220. And I don't like to go much lower than 220 because I use paste wax on them whenever it's done. And if you go much finer than 220, then the dust gets so fine that it clogs all the pores in the wood, and it won't really take the oil finish as well, the wax finish as well. And some people use water to pop the grain, but it takes so much longer for the water to dry. Just use isopropyl. Because, I mean, you know, I sprayed it just a second ago. It's already almost dry. But I have noticed it does pale the wood up a little bit. I can live with that because I'm about to put the Ebenezer stuff on there. Ebenezer Scrooge. And it does clog the sandpaper a little bit faster whenever it's still got the isopropyl on it, but can't win them all, right? And I'm just about done with this piece, honestly. I'm going to grab that Ebenezer right after this 220 grit. And then hopefully it'll turn this piece like jet black, which, you know, I don't plan on this one actually being like meant for food. It's just going to be one that I have in a bowl somewhere that just looks cool. So I'm not too worried about that finish being on it. But I mean, it's just vinegar and steel wool. And I mean, if you use vinegar I mean, it's food grade vinegar, and if you use steel wool to clean your dishes, I mean, I guess at a certain point it's not really something detrimental to put on a food prep surface or whatever you call it. I mean, I'm not going to label it as food safe. I'm not going to sell it, so I'm not too worried about that. If it was a piece I was going to sell, I definitely wouldn't put that on there, though. Just because. See, these little pieces right there, these get kind of hard to sand, right? All right, let me find the ebonizer. This is going to be a really cool transformation. It usually takes a few minutes for it to start actually changing color, but you can see it's already changing a little bit right there. I actually might need to dilute that with a little more vinegar. I'm going to give that a second to start changing the color. I'm going to tie my shoe too. It's doing a little bit. It's not doing everything I hoped it would have, but it does take a little bit of time. I mean, you can see it's getting dark in there. I guess while I'm waiting, I can go ahead and clean it. Still going. Let's see. And then I'm just going to buff it a little bit. Honestly, I might have should have just went straight to some steel wool, but I'm already here. I think steel wool is really good for the last stage. Nice and fine. At least it's more of like a burnishing process than really sanding it, you know. Yeah, see, that darkened it up pretty good. There's still some of that iron you can see on here though. And I'm going to try to work as much of that out as I can. See, it's lightening it up. I don't want to take too much from it, but it gives it this nice weathered look. I don't want it to look too chalky though. And it's easy for this to start looking chalky, but I think that paste wax is going to bring that sheen back. So, I mean, if you look, you know, this piece came from the same, you know, so side by side, there's a very clear difference. See, this is that mineral oil beeswax I was talking about earlier. Oh, look at that. Yep, that did it. You can't really overdo it with this. But you will find if there was any little chips or whatever, little tear outs, those are going to show up whenever you start using the steel wool because they'll start snagging on it and peeling your steel wool off. And it's not the end of the world, but sometimes it just means you got to take a step back, rework a piece. But luckily, I don't see any on this one, and I think that's a good indicator that I'm getting better at this. That I'm running into less pieces that I got to rework. But if you just go to town with a steel wool, then you'll end up getting this nice silky burnished texture on there. It's just, it's just beautiful. I don't know. Maybe it was a bad move using the ebonizer. Maybe it was, but I don't know. I'm kind of liking it. It is a little bit uneven. It's a little bit uneven. I think that could be improved. But I think that's more so the piece of wood that I used than the finish. Because if you look at the original piece, it's kind of got a streak going through it right there. But, I think it's about there. Wipe off the excess. And I think that means this piece is about done. Yeah, I like that color. It looks almost burnt, And who knows? Maybe I should have just burned it instead of using the iron acetate. But at this point, I think it would have about the same look. And whenever you burn them, and then you buff them with steel wool, they do get a really nice silky texture. But I'm curious as to whether or not that would impart a flavor on anything that you eat with it or what. 'Cause I don't know. I think this would make anything taste like pickles if you try eating with it. But that's what it looked like before. I'm wondering if I should make these two live or just call it a day in the shop. I think I'm just going to call it a day. Thank y'all for watching.